What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Farzy show, and just to apologize again for yesterday's audio. The microphone is back working. Hope everyone had just a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Football starts today. We'll get into that. Phillies get a huge victory. Nick Castellanos scorching hot all of a sudden. Who saw that one coming? Well, finally, he's there. Deshaun Watson stuff to talk about in the NFL. Some Eagles conversation to get into in the NFL as well. And Doc Rivers opens up about the 76ers. It comes to Tyrese Maxey. It comes to James Harden. It comes to the league's investigation of James Harden's situation, Joel Embiid's work ethic and leadership. Oh, my goodness, he opened a whole kit and caboodle. And, hey, remember that guy Ben Simmons that was here and he kind of caused all that drama on the way out and all that stuff, and they went up to Brooklyn to play with the Nets and hasn't played yet? Remember that whole game? Remember that guy? He was an Australian fella and he played here for a minute. Doc Rivers opened up about that as well. A lot of that was stuff you had heard before, and I'm going to be referencing and playing a couple of clips for you from an interview that Doc Rivers did on Vince Carter's podcast, which I believe is distributed by ESPN. We're going to play a couple of clips for you. Some of it is eye-opening stuff. There's a lot of praise of Tyrese Maxey there. There's maybe some closure about the Ben Simmons situation if some people still needed that. And then there's also the flat-out denial that any tampering went on between James Harden and the Philadelphia 76ers or anything shady went on in that regard. So we'll get into all that and more today, but we're going to start it off with something new, and we're going to call this the Big Three. The Big Three stories from the day before. We usually sum this up pretty well for you as the show goes on, but just to highlight it for you, the Big Three starts off with this. At number one, JT Realmuto. Before we talk about Nick Castellanos, let's talk about JT Realmuto for a second. A catcher busting it down the first baseline in an attempt to beat out a double play that would have been an inning-ending, threat-killing, no chance of tying the game, double play that he beat out in the eighth inning. One more meatball for the Sicilian fella from Oklahoma. One more Aaron Cheney. And the Sicilian fella from Oklahoma, JT Realmuto, is not beating out that throw. They're not scoring the game-tying run to even things up at a run apiece in the eighth inning. But JT Realmuto apparently had some kale, something light. He wasn't weighed down, busted down the first baseline, beats out the inning-ending double play. Phillies tie the ball game. And then a guy who has really started to heat things up as of late. I mentioned before, we've talked about Alec Boehm hitting .434 in the month of July. We talked about Kyle Schwarber hitting another 10 home runs in the month of July. We talked about JT Realmuto hitting, .336, whatever the heck it was in July. That's all great. And those are great things to do in that month. But under that radar, far under that radar, was Nick Castellanos hitting .282 in the month of July. Not amazing, not phenomenal by any means, but good. As I put out on Twitter yesterday, it's good for a guy that was really struggling at the plate and had a lot of issues off the field when it came to not really responding well to reporters, getting booed by the fans, not looking that great in right field to begin with, and just piling it all on from that point on. He steps up to the plate in the month of July, hits .282. Good to see you. Hasn't hit a home run in over a month. I've referenced this many times since September 2015. That was his last homerless month in his big league career. Well, this past July, that broke that trend, unfortunately. But what does he do? On August 3rd of this month, he hits a home run. They say the man gets hot in August. Let's hope that's the case, because he belted the game-winning two-run home run over the center field wall. Give credit to Ruben Amaro Jr. He did call it. I believe he said the left center field wall, but this was more of the dead center field wall. Nonetheless, wins the ball game for the Phillies. You feel great for a guy like Nick Castellanos. Look, I know that he rubs people the wrong way. I know that however he might answer media people's questions. And when I say media people, I'm not just talking about Jim Salisbury. When that issue happened, I brought up the idea, or not brought up the idea, but the example of Nick Castellanos shooting down Tom McCarthy during a post-game on-field interview. Is that a question? Hey, Nick, you're certainly squaring up. Baseball's nice right now. Is that a question? I'll call it a lead-in. It was a lead-in. It was a setup to make you maybe, instead of just ordering you, hey, talk about that. Instead of doing that, I just kind of led you into maybe taking over. Yeah, Nick doesn't do that. Nick hits baseballs. Nick doesn't have a college degree. Nick hits baseballs. It's been Nick Castellanos' impression. Brand new. But steps up to the plate, hits that home run. And as everyone is saying, and I am saying, it's his biggest swing as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. If you have Alec Boehm figuring it out at the plate, if you have JT Realmuto figuring it out at the plate, if you have Kyle Schwarber, who is cooled off a bit, but if he continues to hit bombs for you, oh, and by the way, you get better defensively in center field, which is what we could say about Brandon Marsh, and you get Gene Segura back possibly today, and you get Bryce Harper back by September. The Cardinals, forget about it. The Phillies are going to win the third wild card spot. And this was my feeling going into the trade deadline. This was my feeling really in the early goings of the season when the Phillies were really struggling and still struggling under Joe Girardi. I felt like the talent that they had on the pitching staff with having two solid number one guys, with the lineup that they put together, they were at least going to give you the meaningful games in September. I told you the Phillies had a run in them, even when Joe Girardi was still the manager. I said they got to get rid of Girardi. They got to shake things up. They did that. They go on to win 9 in a row. They're doing phenomenally well under fifth best record, sixth best record in all of baseball under Rob Thompson. Now you get these guys starting to figure it out that are going to be the heart of your order and get promoted to the heart of your order, a guy like Alec Boehm, for instance. And now you're adding talent in the bullpen like David Robertson, who picked up the save yesterday as first as a member of the Phillies. Nice to see you, David Robertson, getting 2 strikeouts and then a foul out. Yeah, all right. That's a good sign. I mentioned already getting Brandon Marsh in center field, defensive upgrade at the least. Hopefully they can fix his swing. Evan Macy from PhillyVoice.com will be joining us shortly to talk about the trade deadline and how much better the Phillies have gotten through these moves. And then you also bring in a guy, aside from Robertson, you bring in an arm in Noah Syndergaard, who we will see make his Phillies debut tonight. That I think, if all is said, when all is said and done, I think he at least has the opportunity to compete for a start in the playoffs. You might still have Bailey Falter in the rotation later on in the season if Noah Syndergaard starts to break down. We referenced the other day about his starts and how many of them have been on a 6 days rest. 12 of them. 12 of his 15 starts have been on 6 days rest. Good Lord. I understand we're working a guy in easy when it comes to Tommy John surgery and all that, but hey, let's see if he can ramp it up a little bit here. I'm curious to see, or hear rather, what he has to say about how ready he is, how prepared he is, how ready his body is to take on more of a workload if the Phillies, in fact, call upon him to do that. We'll see how that plays out, but it'll start tonight. But bottom line is the Phillies get a huge win yesterday, split with the Atlanta Braves, a team that's far, far ahead of them in the standings. We get it here in the NL East. But they split in this series. They got a 4-game set coming up against the Washington Nationals, where, yes, you will see Noah Syndergaard pitch tonight. David Robertson already looked like he was zipping it in there pretty well. 4 days between appearances for David Robertson, and looked a little shaky. I think the first 2 pitches he threw were balls, and then he came back around and was able to get the 2 strikeouts to lead off start off his 9th inning. So that was great to see. And then we'll see what Noah Syndergaard can bring, and we'll see the way the Phillies are able to work Brandon Marsh as well as Matt Vierling in center field. So all in all, a pretty good 24 hours for the Philadelphia Phillies, and let's hope that they keep that coming. The guy that we're going to be focusing on for a little bit now is Nick Castellanos, and see if he can do what he has done historically in his career and get hot in the month of August. This would be a great month to do that as Gene Segura is working himself back in, and then later, hopefully get Bryce Harper getting a couple of more swings under his belt, and then he heats up in the month of September like he did last year. So let's hope that's the case. But Rob Thompson was asked after yesterday's game about what that big home run meant to Nick Castellanos, and not just him, but also what it meant to the rest of the ball club. Here's Topper after the game yesterday.
For him.
Well, maybe it gets him going, but I mean, he's really been hitting the ball hard the last couple of days, and he's getting some hits, and he's hitting the ball hard, and he's hitting the ball hard and not getting hits too. So the swing looks good, confidence is there. We just keep moving forward.
It looked like the dugout was really happy for him.
Oh.
What was it like in there?
Oh, it was electric. It really was, because everybody's pulling for him. They know what he's going through, and they know that he wants to do well and he cares, and so they care about him. So it was really neat.
There we go. Oh, good feels all the time. Phillies back at it tonight against the Nationals. So we'll see how this series plays. Look, you got a 4-game set here. Please take 3 of 4. Please win the series. No splits. No playing down to the opponent. None of that stuff. It's crunch time, baby. We're in the month of August. It's time to make things happen. Just ride Nick Castellanos for a while. Hopefully that's the case. 7:05 start time in South Philly tonight, by the way. Paolo Espino gets the start against the aforementioned Noah Syndergaard. That's step number 1. Step number 2 of the big 3. 76ers. I am very amused by anything that goes on in the offseason with the Sixers this year, because I am very much looking forward to them taking a huge leap forward next year. I want to see James Harden really being that facilitator. I want to see Tyrese Maxey be that guy that can get you 25 a night. Like, I want to see him take that much of a step forward, and I want to see Joel Embiid continue to get you 28 to 31 points a night. Like, that's the offense I want to see, with James Harden's assists just going off the charts bonkers. That's what I want to see. That's what I'm looking forward to. I think at this point, Matisse Thybulle is going to be in on your bench. I don't think you're going to make a trade. Tobias Harris, I don't see the Sixers making a trade. I think this is what the Sixers are going to have with the additions that they made to the bench and PJ Tucker in their starting lineup. This is what the Sixers are going to have going into the season. So yesterday, 2 days ago, rather, Doc Rivers, 76ers head coach, sat down on the Vince Carter podcast, and he talked about a whole number of things. And folks, I couldn't help myself. For the people on the podcast, I'm about to show my notes. So I'm going to hold up my legal pad. This is a legal pad. This is how I've been taking my notes since college. And the funny thing is, this is all how I took notes for my radio shows in college. This isn't how I took notes for my classes. If I did, I might be a doctor. Anyway, these are my notes. This is all an hour interview on the Vince Carter podcast. A couple of things that jumped out before I play the 3 things that really jumped out at me at this press conference. One is that Doc Rivers is just, I don't think he really remembers what he said about Ben Simmons when he was asked about, when he was asked about whether you could win with him as a point guard. How it came off isn't how I meant it. Well, you said what you said. It wasn't like it was a misinterpretation there. In your head, you might have been thinking something totally different. But what we heard, it wasn't like I don't know. Like when you are asked the question, can you win with Ben Simmons? And he goes, I don't know. That doesn't show a vote of confidence in your player. Even afterwards, trying to explain to Ben. Like, that's just something that Doc Rivers, I don't think, is getting over. One of the other things that popped out to me here was the how bad the team chemistry was. Doc Rivers talked about how, of all his years in the NBA and all his years of coaching, he had never been on a team plane where guys weren't playing cards. And the Sixers were the first team to not be playing cards when he took over as a head coach. He was like, he's on the plane, he's looking around, and like, nobody's playing cards. He's like, what the heck's going on here? So apparently, I mean, we all know that everyone has their own form of entertainment. Everyone's on maybe their phone and all that stuff. So maybe you're not as social as you used to be. But the guy was coaching the year before he was with the Sixers. So it wasn't like he was out of basketball for 10 years and then came back in the iPhone era or whatever. But he said the Sixers were the first team he'd ever been a part of that didn't play cards. Which seems odd because the team's not socializing on road trips like that. So he had to say to Joel Embiid, hey, man, we gotta play cards or something. We got to get something going here. And then the Sixers started to do it, and Joel Embiid started to get involved in doing it. Because, like, one of the crazy things, especially from Doc's era of playing basketball that I remember from being a kid watching that era, was every time you got to see the behind-the-scenes footage of guys on the plane, they're all playing cards. They're all having themselves a good time. They're all taking – there's stories of Michael Jordan cheating on these flights and all that stuff, cheating at cards and stuff like that. One of my favorite things about athletes playing cards ever, I'll just digress real quick. The great John Marzano, former big league catcher, the Philadelphia guy, friend of mine, may he rest in peace. He would tell me about how he would play cards when he was with Seattle with Ken Griffey Jr. and Jay Bruner, and he loved playing cards with those guys because those guys were multi-bajillionaires, and he was this little catching guy that was just happy to be in the big leagues, basically. So those guys would be putting money down and betting over their heads and betting over their hands, I should say. And he would just be like, yeah, okay, I'll keep playing. I'll take it. Because they didn't care if they lost $2,000. John Marzano's like, that's a bonus for me. So he made himself a nice chunk of change right there. Good for him. But it's all about the interaction of athletes. And that's how you build the chemistry. And Doc Rivers in this interview was talking about how bad the chemistry was on the 76ers. So during the interview, he talks about how he tried to mend that by making Joel Embiid more of a vocal leader, more of a presence to the team when he wasn't just playing the game and he was always around the team and always trying to do that. He told a story about how with Paul Pierce, with the Celtics, he said, hey, look, we all know you're Paul Pierce. You don't have to tell us that you're Paul Pierce, but we don't need you to be Paul Pierce right now. We need you to be a Celtic right now, meaning forget that you might be the last guy to show up. Forget that you got the nicest car. Forget that you got the biggest contract, whatever it might be. We need you to be a teammate here. And it's a similar, not exactly like, but a similar conversation that Doc Rivers says he had with Joel Embiid. The only thing I thought was odd was Joel Embiid in his true rookie season, in his rookie season when he was playing for the first time, despite the first 2 years being injured, Ben Simmons was here. And I remember the photos that would come out of Joel Embiid taking Ben Simmons out and making sure he was a part of it. I remember Joel Embiid doing interviews talking about how he knows what it was like to be the injured young guy and not being able to contribute. And he wanted to make sure that Ben Simmons didn't feel the same way he did. So to me, I think that's leadership, and that definitely predates Doc Rivers. And the only reason I say that is because I know we all have this impression, and I know our friends in the chat will have it as well, of Doc Rivers kind of exaggerating things a bit. And I know it looks good for him to come in and say, well, this chemistry was terrible, and I came in and I fixed it. All right. And maybe Joel Embiid was more in that shell. Maybe things had already hit the fan enough between him and Ben Simmons in the organization, where there was just no return to grace. There was no coming back from that. So I thought that was interesting. But look, make no bones about it. Joel Embiid has been the best player we've ever seen him be since Doc Rivers was here. How much credit you want to give to Doc Rivers for that is really up to you. I am willing to give him a lot of credit for that. I think Doc Rivers, the reason I wanted Doc Rivers here is because I thought he could be the one guy to get the attention of Ben Simmons. Like, hey, you got to shoot. You got to do that. I think the one thing he was able to do, if anything else, was tell Joel Embiid how damn talented he is. And I think it takes sometimes that outside voice that you really hadn't heard a lot yet, like Doc Rivers coming in and telling you, oh, I'm pretty good, and I could be even better if I just do this. So I think that was an interesting thing. That's what I'm willing to give Doc Rivers credit for. Acknowledge his part in Joel Embiid maturing as an athlete. And yes, personally for Joel Embiid, I think a lot of it does have to do with being a dad, becoming a father, that ownership, that responsibility that you feel. So those are a couple of things that stuck out to me. Going to dinner with the team, the vast improvement of leadership with Joel Embiid since Doc Rivers had been here. And I also thought this was wild. The first day of camp leading into this past season, Doc Rivers showed the Game 7 footage against the Atlanta Hawks. And if it's the first day of camp, then I don't think Ben Simmons is there. But Doc said he showed the edited version of the game, like the quick version of the game, and pointed out all the Sixers' mistakes. And when he talked about Ben Simmons' dunk that he passed up on because Danilo Gallinari was right behind him, and he passed the Thibault, he said, look, all that was a -1. Thibault got fouled. He went to the line. He made one free throw. He missed the other one, and it's a -1. That's all that was. So people made it bigger than what it was. Well, I mean, the way I take it is Doc is reading the stat sheet there. He's giving you the numbers, which is funny because also in the interview, he rips analytics when it comes to Joel Embiid's MVP candidacy. But he just goes, yeah, so all that was a -1. No, it wasn't. That was the end of Ben Simmons in Philadelphia. That's what it was, the end of Ben Simmons in Philadelphia, that play. All this was -1. That's really a short-sighted way of looking at it because we all looked at each other, and I told you guys a million times before, I was at that game, me and my buddy Bennett. Thanks, Bennett. I'm at that game. And it was like we all looked around like, that wasn't as bad as, no way. And then as the game grew, as the game went on, and the Sixers started to really lose control after that moment, it was like, what the hell was Ben Simmons doing on that play? And that was the end of an era. The last time we felt good about Ben Simmons being on the Sixers was when they came out of halftime in Game 6, and Ben Simmons had that little loft pass to Joel Embiid. That was the last time we felt good about it. So him passing up on that dunk, as we all know, and we've talked about it a million times, that was the end. That was a huge play to think one of your team leaders wasn't going to even dunk a basketball to help you win. Okay. Bigger than just a -1. That's what I'll say. That's what I'll say to rebut Doc's point. So those are a couple of things that jumped out, but these are the bigger things, and I want to go to a happy note here that's going to make us all feel warm and fuzzy. And that's Tyrese Maxey. Doc Rivers loves this guy. Loves Tyrese Maxey. What you're about to hear on the Vince Carter podcast is Doc Rivers just emoting, showering Tyrese Maxey with love. And aside from the obvious, the one thing that really jumped out was Tyrese Maxey didn't know how to take a break. Here's Doc Rivers on what Tyrese Maxey is to him.
Well, he's the most impressive young player I've ever had in 21 years of coaching. So that's how impressive he is. His work ethic, Vince, is beyond belief. Many times already this summer, at least 2 or 3 times, we've had to tell him to go sit down somewhere and go relax. He works with Sam Cassell and my son Spencer as their skill development coaches. And he called Spencer 2 weeks ago because, like Ross, he went on a vacation. The difference, Ross, is this is the first vacation he'd ever been on in his life, is what he told us. And I was like, wait, what? He said, no, I've never been on vacation. And he asked Spencer, what do you do on vacation?
I love it.
True question. Like, what do you do on vacation? And Spence was like, you relax. And he's like, for how long? For how many days? I mean, we're going for a week. I can't relax for a week. But that's him. That really is him. And last week he's back now in LA working out. And first thing he said is, vacation's too long, coach. Can't do it that long. And I'm thinking, man, I love this guy. Every day, every time he talks.
I really do love the idea of Tyrese Maxey not knowing how to take a vacation. Like that, what do you do? Like, what do you do on vacation? And this is one of several stories that have come out regarding Tyrese Maxey and his work ethic. Now, that's beyond him, posting the videos on social media, whatever it might be. But if you remember, the day after the season ended, Doc Rivers is telling a story about how Tyrese Maxey called him and said, all right, well, can we get back in the gym? And he said, hey, take some time off, relax a little bit, and then come back. And that's when we'll start talking about your new program to get you ready for your next NBA season, your 3rd NBA season. But I love the idea of a guy calling somebody else, be like, so like on vacation and stuff, like, what do you do? Like, how do you vacation? Draw me up a game plan so I can attack my vacation. And then apparently vacation is way too long. And then before you know it, you see him with James Harden, you see him with Sam Cassell. You see other things like away from Tyrese Maxey, you see Harden, you see Tucker, you see Joel Embiid, all sitting on bleachers together, looking like they just got done a workout together. Doc Rivers said, I believe it was 9 of the guys got together just last week to work on their game. And that was without Doc Rivers. And Doc said that he saw James Harden recently and said, he just got to see him. I mean, he didn't see him play basketball. He said, he just looked great. He said James Harden looked like he was in great shape. They didn't use the best shape of his life, but he did say that James Harden looked like he was in some phenomenal shape, which was great. Then after that, Doc talked about what James Harden is doing for this team by taking this pay cut. The first thing that I don't believe is in this cut, I want to highlight it though, is that they asked Doc Rivers about the tampering case, about the NBA looking into the Sixers, investigating the Sixers, opening an investigation to see if the Sixers are guilty of tampering when it came to the James Harden situation. Doc Rivers said, well, it's not true. It's just flat out not true. That's all you really need to hear from that point on. But here's what it meant to Doc Rivers and the Sixers to see James Harden say no to $47 million guaranteed. Doc Rivers on Harden's deal.
Too much. He calls me too much. You can tell him that. He really does. It's been great. He's working. He's working his butt off. I think about 9 of the guys were in town last week, and they worked out every day together. That's, Vince, when you start seeing that kind of stuff. He's working.
What, his shape and conditioning is like. I'm curious how much contact you've had with him this summer to talk with him, check in with him, see what he's up to?
Too much. He calls me too much. You can tell him that. Yeah, he really does. It's been great. He's working. He's working his butt off. I think about 9 of the guys were in town last week, and they worked out every day together. That's, Vince, when you start seeing that kind of stuff, that's the guys, that's the players getting each other. And when you see that, that's a good sign. He works out with our developing guys. They report back. He's in great shape. And he is working his butt off. I saw him about 4 days ago, and he looked great. Obviously I didn't see him play, but I just looked at him. And so, James knows, James did some good stuff this summer for the team, like giving up money. And then secondly, he was like, listen, I want to win. How can we do that? How can I use my contract to help us win? So it just tells you that right now he is in the right place, and we needed him there, honestly, because we would not have been able to do what we did without the help from James this summer.
I mean, you can tell the guy's floored. Excuse me, I think we had a little bit of a reset there. My bad. But you're just floored. He's floored by the work that James Harden is putting in for a guy that is supposed to not be a me first guy, or excuse me, not to be a team first guy, for a guy just to go after money. That does not appear to be the version of James Harden that we've gotten here in Philadelphia, at least not right now. One thing Vince Carter did set up in a question there to Doc Rivers was getting veteran guys like when he was in Boston and being able to win a championship with those guys. And Doc Rivers said, you got to get those guys at the right time. And the example that he brought up was Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen coming to Boston. And each one of them, he said, he was like, I look back at the stats and it was like each guy up until that moment was averaging like 20 or 21 shots a game. And he brought them all together. He said, guys, look, let's just address the obvious here. That ain't going to happen. Paul, Kevin, Ray, you guys aren't getting 21 shots, each of you. And Kevin Garnett apparently was the guy that raised his hand and said, I don't need it. Give me whatever's left over, but I don't need 21 shots. So you need to get those guys that are stars in their own right to acknowledge the point in the career that they're at and go, I don't need to be that guy anymore. I can just be part of this team. And that apparently, when Doc Rivers says you need to get him at the right time, that's the time that James Harden is in right now. Because I don't think there's any other point in his career where he'd say, $47 million? I don't need that right now up front and guaranteed. Let's stretch it out a little bit here and make sure we have enough to win a championship. He stayed true to his word. And here the Sixers are, much better lineup than what they had walking off the court last year when it comes to their starting five, and certainly a better bench than what they had last year entering the playoffs. So that is a great thing to hear from Doc Rivers on James Harden. And then the last thing is just the closure piece. And I hate to continuously go back to this, but we haven't even talked about it in a long time, and rightfully so. Nothing really has come out about it. But it was the end of an era. So anytime some more information comes out about it, I feel like it's necessary to just discuss briefly, at least, because we have talked about the Ben Simmons thing to death. But this is interesting. What comes out here is Doc saying the problems with Ben Simmons preceded his time. The problems with Ben Simmons preceded Doc Rivers' time in Philadelphia. Here's Doc on that.
That one comment thing had nothing to do with why Ben wanted to leave. All right, let me just say that. It was a lot of things has been told me and publicly now that happened long before I got there. What frustrated me was that I still think it shouldn't have been enough to want to leave. I just didn't, and I told Ben that. I kept telling him that this is not why you want to leave a team. You work these things out. They didn't get worked out, and so. Yeah, we've had one talk, not a long talk, but we did have one good talk. Ben called me afterwards, which I thought was great, and we had a good talk. But the point was he was already leaving, and I just really, listen. I really believed, even though 99% of the people didn't, that we could make this work with Ben and Joe and the team, because I'm built that way. That's what coaches have to do.
And in all honesty, every coach should think that way. It's the right way to think. But the two things there was that Doc says the problem was preceded his time with the 76ers. So in other words, not my fault. It was already terrible from before I got here. And then the other thing was when Ben told him what was wrong, Doc was like, you don't leave for that. Like Doc, whatever it was, whatever the specific instances, and we can speculate, we can read into the reports and all that stuff that Ben essentially denied it all when he was introduced as a member of the Nets. But when Ben Simmons, after the fact, when he was already gone, to quote Doc said, that's not a reason to leave. That's it. What are you Basically, this is what I hear. What are you complaining about? What's the problem? That's not a problem. You think that's a problem? That's not a problem. We can fix this. And it was like, no, like we could have fixed this. Should past tense. We could have fixed this. So that's the latest on the Sixers scenario. That's where Doc Rivers' head is at going into the rest of this offseason and then later training camp for the 76ers. So there you go. Number 3 on the big 3 list right here, the Deshaun Watson situation. I had told you guys I am going to employ a phrase that I hate using. Wait and see. The NFL did not give Deshaun Watson a 6-game suspension. The NFL and the NFLPA hired an arbiter. This is the new collective bargaining agreement. And that is Judge Sue Robinson. Sue L. Robinson. And she goes, 6-game suspension. Yeah, he's a total creep. No fine. And the NFL's like, what? What are you talking about? You're working for us, right? You're just supposed to. We wanted a year. What are you doing? And she's like, well, all right, fine. How about this? He can't go to any masseuse that's not team sanctioned. He has to go to a team sanctioned. That's not even a punish. What are you talking about? And the NFLPA is like, woohoo, only 6 games. So the NFL, I think, did the right thing. But here's where they're damned if they do, damned if they didn't, damned if they did. They approved this whole process. And now the judge gave them a ruling against what they wanted. So now they have to go against what they had previously said they wanted and overrule the judge. So they admit being wrong in the first place, but they're doing the right thing because I think Deshaun Watson is a total creep. This isn't one woman word against his where there's doubt, maybe. This is 24 women. This is 22 settlements already? Yeah, something stinks. And when you see the grand jury testimony, the video of Deshaun Watson, if you haven't watched that, the one thing that jumps out to me that's just ridiculous. Like I don't try to put myself in somebody else's shoes because you can't. But I'm just saying that if I'm a professional athlete and my body is a temple and I'm also a millionaire, I'm not going to be alone in a private setting with like a woman, for instance, like a masseuse or anybody that could, maybe one person might lie about it. Like, I don't want to take that risk. I don't want to put myself in that position. I'm going with somebody I know, I trust, somebody maybe even the team knows and trusts. I might go to 1 or 2 different masseuses. But I'm not, as he said in the grand jury testimony. I saw this person on Instagram and I went to them because they were, really? that was your background check? Saw them on Instagram, saw them on social media, saw their masseuse. Okay, yeah, this is good for me. Really? And we're supposed to just all think that you're just not one thirsty-ass human being. Yeah, okay. No thanks. And the judge who reviewed the case and still said 6-game suspension, only 6-game suspension, no fine, identified him as, oh, yeah, he had ill intent. Come on! How do you only get 6 games for that? And I don't want to hear a damn thing about Calvin Ridley. That's a totally different ball of wax. It's a totally different scenario. But when it comes to this 6 games, you have to get more than 6 games. You have to somehow be fined for this. And this is going to be a huge battle. It could go on in the court system and all that. And just last night, Yahoo Sports put some stories out there regarding Deshaun Watson. And it really is amazing about a couple of different things. This is from Yahoo Sports. According to some sources, the NFL is going to continue to push on this. And according to the sources that are familiar with the appeal, the NFL is seeking one of 2 outcomes. Watson would be suspended indefinitely for 1 year. So I guess that's kind of definite. And during that year, he would undergo an element of treatment related to the behavior established in this case. Another thing they're looking at here To take another step further, Watson would be subject to a significant fine if his suspension is ultimately less than 1 year. So they're looking for the right to fine, not just extend the suspension, but also fine him money as well. So for me, it is wild. And the fact that this is where they've come to, this is the point that the NFL is at, is bonkers. And I'll point this out. Here's another damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. Sue L. Robinson is a woman. And the NFL is now ignoring or trying to ignore this woman's ruling. The NFL also, after the Ray Rice situation, hired a female investigator to handle domestic issues. What popped up not too much longer after that? The Ezekiel Elliott situation. Female investigator goes to Ezekiel Elliott, interviews him, comes back to the NFL and goes, I don't find that the woman is credible in this case. And apparently some police officers thought the same thing. So the investigator, female investigator, goes back to the NFL and she goes, yeah, I don't think the woman really is believable. And the NFL goes, we're ignoring him and we're proceeding. So in two big profile cases with the NFL, where the NFL looked to a woman for advice, they're now ignoring that woman. Hey, you know what women love? Being ignored. That's fun. So the NFL, even though they're trying to do the right thing, they just shoot themselves in the foot. And what's crazy, I would talk to Adam Schefter about stuff like this a number of times, and Schefter would say, the NFL is getting themselves out of the investigation business. And good for them, because what business do they have being an investigation? They're not good at it. Even when they hire their own investigator, they're like, quiet. That's not a good look. So I saw Schefter on ESPN yesterday, and he was like ranting and raving. Like Schefter was fired up. Like the NFL was saying it was going to get out of the disciplinary action stuff, and now they're right back in it by telling a judge that they approved, thanks but no thanks. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. The bottom line is the right thing is happening. They're pushing for more against Deshaun Watson, which they should, because I think the guy's a total creep. And I think most people with half a brain realize the guy ain't right. Ridiculous. Those are the big three things. Oh, no. Actually, I got one more thing. Making a fourth thing. The Jason Kelce story in The Athletic by Bo Wolf and Zach Berman was absolutely incredible. If you get a chance to read it, you should definitely read it. I know one of the things that's circulating around right now is Jason Babin, supposedly. I don't think the story originally mentioned who spray painted Jason Kelce's car, but somebody spray painted Jason Kelce's car. So Jason Kelce comes around in 2011, I think it was rookie year, and he's bouncing around from room to room saying who the bleep did this, and he's pretty angry about it. And then they find out later it was Jason Babin. Well, the funny thing is Jason Babin saw the story and quoted it and put it on his Instagram story, I believe, and basically said that Jason Kelce ratted him out and told on him, tattletaled, and told Andy Reid, dad, quote unquote, that somebody had spray painted his car. And Jason Babin wanted it out there that it was a joke and that it was washable paint. So there you go. The other thing is that it is hard to name an athlete more respected than Jason Kelce. Maybe you have guys that are as respected, but I don't know if you have guys that are more respected than Jason Kelce is in the Novacare complex within those walls, outside of a guy spray painting phallic symbols on his car in allegedly washable paint. We talked at like the other day about Jordan Davis and how much Jordan Davis looks up to Jason Kelce and how much Jordan Davis appreciated Jason Kelce taking him as a defensive lineman, taking him aside and saying, hey, here's how you win your one-on-one battles. Here's how you use your hands. Here's how you plant your hips, all stuff like that. Here's how you can get around and get that leverage. Well, for a guy like Jordan Davis, it shouldn't be that hard to get that leverage when you got that size. But damn, Jason Kelce's telling him how to beat those other offensive linemen, not just centers, but line up in the nose tackle position, lining up over a guy like Jason Kelce, how to win those battles, a Hall of Fame center, I believe. I think that speaks volumes when he's reaching out across the line of scrimmage. There's another article that came out yesterday about how well the Eagles have built themselves up in the trenches. It was from RG3's Twitter. RG3 put out there how well the Eagles are built for success. Chad Johnson just came out to go beyond the trenches, talked about how the Eagles are a Super Bowl contender for Chad Ochocinco. All kinds of praise. And the praise doesn't happen without the leadership of a guy like Jason Kelce. And on the defensive side of the football, it doesn't happen without the leadership of a guy like Brandon Graham, who we talked about wanted to play 15 years here in Philadelphia, It doesn't happen without the leadership of a guy like Darius Slay, always keeping his mouth open, encouraging other guys. Also encouraging guys on the other side of the football as well, like Devontae Smith. How many times have we heard Devontae Smith talk about Darius Slay and him wanted to get in a race, wanted to go one-on-one? Who gets the better of them? Who gets the better of those battles? There are certain times you can look at training camp and I think at least tell something special is going to happen. When I first interviewed Chris Long in the 2017 season, you got a feeling that something special was going on in that locker room. Malcolm Jenkins, you could feel something special was going on in that locker room. The way that offensive line got together as a whole, the way they looked up to a guy like Jason Peters, there was just something different about that team. And in no way, shape, or form makes me put down $1 million. Oh, it's a guarantee. But what it does do when you have a locker room with a leader like Jason Kelce, who I think other people realize is on the back end, other people, I think that sinks in. I think players realize that. It's almost like that makes them hold themselves even more accountable. They don't want to be the person that's holding Jason Kelce back in his final year or two in the NFL. When it's already a story almost every year now. Is Jason Kelce done? Is Jason Kelce retired? And this is the first time you really hear Jason Kelce, as he did by releasing that video of him sipping a beer and getting the foam all up in his mustache. When you talk about Jason Kelce going out there and saying, you know what, I'm coming back. When he has to address it, it makes it an even bigger story. When he can't just sit back and just go play, that makes it a bigger story. So I think guys are motivated by that. And I think what it does do when you have leaders like that, and you know the chemistry in the room is good, really good, and you hear them talking about their quarterback the way they're talking about him, I think what it does do is let you know when they do face adversity this year, this is a team that isn't going to cower. This is a team that is going to rally. And I think one of the best attributes, and probably the best attribute of a guy like Doug Peterson, was letting his players police themselves and having his pulse, his fingers on the pulse of the locker room. Nick Sirianni, for a guy that wasn't a player in the NFL, I think has a great knack for that. And the perfect example is the thing I never thought would be, which was the flower power speech. You guys want to be a flower, you want to plant your roots, you want to grow into something beautiful. And we're all looking around going like, there's oak trees that grow into beauty. There's something more, I don't know, aggressive. There's something more manly, masculine, powerful. And it's talking about daisies. Like, what? But somehow, some way, that resonated with his players. The way we reacted to it, a lot of people in the media reacted to it, a lot of fans reacted to it. That reached that locker room. A guy coming in talking about his starting quarterback's message of how rents due every day, all that stuff. This guy knows his audience, and his audience isn't you and me. His audience are the guys in that locker room. And he's got his finger on that pulse. And I think what helps that, of course, is the leadership, the veteran leadership on this team. And when you have a guy that is the leader of this team, a guy that addresses the team and commands that respect, that's Jason Kelce. And he makes things a lot easier on the coaches, I feel. Especially also on the defensive side of the ball, a guy like Brandon Graham, I mentioned Darius Slay. What Fletcher Cox said, he didn't say anything after that Raiders game, but something changed. Leadership's going to go a far way. I think it could very well be Jason Kelce's last year in Philadelphia. I'm willing to bet it's Fletcher Cox's last year in Philadelphia. These guys are going to play for those veterans. And seeing a story like that in The Athletic about Jason Kelce only cemented that point further. Those are the big three. It's last 3.5 with that Jason Kelce story. By the way, training camp yesterday, saw a lot of people tweeting. Jalen Hurts supposedly was really on top of his game yesterday, so take that for what you will. No stats needed. Just letting you know he looked crisp. That's what you want to see. And Jalen Reagor, you want to talk about a guy that's really here in the heat. Apparently he is really performing well under this pressure, which is nice to see as well. Let me tell you guys about Steven Singer. The other corner of 8th and Walnut right there on Jewelers Row. My man, Steven Singer of Steven Singer. Jewelers, when it comes to all your big jewelry purchases, look no further than Steven Singer. Go online at IHateStevenSinger.com. That's IHateStevenSinger.com and check out all their amazing inventory. Always fast and free shipping at IHateStevenSinger.com. And here's what Steven's giving you. The perfect price guarantee every day. So it's not just about some promo code, some sale. No. The sale's every day. Because the perfect price guarantee is that sale. Other jewelers like to mark things way up just to mark it down a couple of bucks in front of you, make you feel like you won something. No. Steven, you already win when you walk in the door. So do what I do. When it comes to all your big jewelry purchases, go to Steven Singer Jewelers, the other corner of 8th and Walnut. Get walked through everything by a real jewelry expert. That's IHateStevenSinger.com. Without further ado, let's talk to our friend Evan Macy of PhillyVoice, PhillyVoice.com, about all things Phillies and where he stands after this trade deadline and how much better the Phillies got. Right now, Evan Macy from PhillyVoice.com, Phillies writer extraordinaire. What's going on, Evan?
Hey, just trying to beat the heat and stay hydrated out there. It's not a great golf day, but we power through.
Right. So, okay, just real quick. Of course, my audience knows that we tape these interviews the night before the show, and you're kind enough. We had some technical issues, so I didn't text you till later in the day, and I appreciate you jumping on. But you were going twilight golfing, is it? You got glow-in-the-dark golf balls? How'd this work?
No, twilight is, in the late afternoon. Everybody tees off. I'm at Bluestone Country Club. Everybody tees off around 4:35, 5:30, and there's 9 holes in different formats. And there's a little FedEx standings kind of thing where they keep track of how you do each week, and then everybody puts $20 in the pot, and then you win money at the end of the month. So I had that today. I played okay. Could have been better.
That guy, I wasn't sure how late twilight it went, because I have heard some courses do the glow in the dark golf ball. My buddy's done it. He hasn't quite invited me yet, but whatever. Golf is golf nonetheless. So good for you to get out there. I gotta ask you this, my friend. We're looking at this Phillies roster right now. How much better did they get after the trade deadline? Noah Syndergaard gets his start. We'll talk about that. But how good, how much better, how much improvement did this Phillies team undergo after the trade deadline?
I think the way to answer that question is you have to have the correct context going into it. I really think that we're in one of the darkest timelines for the Phillies. When you really think about it, they had to fire Joe Girardi in May. They lost the MVP. He broke his hand. They have a starting pitcher on the 60-day DL. All of these young guys, Bryson Stott, Mickey Moniak, none of them are panning out. Castellanos has 1 home run in the last month. And so on and so on. I mean, the fact that this team is somehow in the wild card position right now is amazing. If a few things had fallen in the Phillies on the Phillies side, some of the things I mentioned didn't happen. Maybe they're running away with a wild card spot. Maybe they're in the NL East race. So that being said, the team has what it needs to contend. Everybody just has to be and perform. The center field situation is such an atrocious mess that I think bringing in what is essentially a swap of prospects, sending O'Hop over to LA and bringing in, that center fielder, Marc.
Brandon Marsh, yeah.
He's one of the best defensive center fielders in the game. If he's your 9-hole hitter and he hits 220 and he improves your defense up the middle, that's a substantial improvement. With Eflin on the shelf, they needed a starting pitcher. I think that, Syndergaard, expect him to slot in as kind of a number 3 or number 4 guy. You can't expect him to pitch like an ace. And if you have that approach, it's definitely an upgrade. And then David Robertson, you saw what he did on Wednesday afternoon. He came in, didn't hesitate, shut the door against the Braves to get his first save, first day as a Philly. So I think they're definitely better. I don't think that these trades are going to swing things as much as a healthy Segura, a healthy Harper, and everybody, and maybe Castellanos starts to better. Those are the key ingredients for them succeeding, but they definitely added on the margins and they're better for sure.
Would you throw a word like significant at these moves?
I mean, significant would have been getting one of the top pitchers. Everything that the Padres did was significant. Everything that the Yankees did was significant. It's just, if you compare these moves to what they did, the Astros made some really nice moves, the Cardinals, the Mets. I think every single team made a trade except the Rockies yesterday, which is incredible.
Right.
I think the Phillies are probably in the middle of the pack as far as what their was. It's significant in that it gives them depth and it kind of alleviates some very big weaknesses.
Okay.
The floor of the pitching staff is a little bit better. The floor is a little bit better. The defense in center field is a little bit better. If this is 10 or 15 better after the trade deadline, that's definitely a win, I guess.
Okay, I'll take that. Now, when it comes to a move like David Robertson, you mentioned he got his first save already. I mean, if you're talking about significance, I mean, that's a guy that might end up being your closer, certainly back end of the bullpen type of guy. Would that be the most significant, or at least looking at it right now from bird's eye view? Would that be the biggest move that they made?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, they don't really have a closer. I've been wondering why Sir Anthony didn't really get a chance. Sir Anthony Dominguez isn't really given the chance to have that role. But everybody they've put in there, they haven't really liked. Knubel hasn't particularly good. Hand has been okay. But yeah, I mean, if they have a person who knows his role and is able to pitch in the ninth inning every day or almost every day, then you have Sir Anthony in the eighth, you have Brad Hand in the seventh. Everything kind of slots into place. So yeah, having a guy who can pitch in the late innings and you're confident in, and he has a good body of work, I think you're probably right. Of the four I got, he's probably got the potential to make the biggest impact. I'd agree.
All right. So we'll agree on that one. All right. Now Noah Syndergaard will get his first start as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. Apparently wearing the powder blues at the time we tape this tonight, Thursday night, in this series coming up, 4-game set against the Washington Nationals. My concern here with Noah Syndergaard is that he seems to have pitched well this season, sub-4 ERA, well, a 3.60, 3.83 ERA going into his first start as a member of the Phillies. But 12 of the 15 starts have come on 6 days rest. How careful do the Phillies need to be with him? What's your overall expectation with Noah Syndergaard now as a member of the Phillies?
It would have been having Eflin on the 60-day DL complicates things because you're really stuck with the Bailey Falter or one of those marginal minor league guys who aren't quite good enough to be a pitcher in the National League. I don't really like this Phillies team with a 6-man rotation. So yeah, I mean, they're probably going to have to be a little bit strategic. There's an off day, for example, that's coming Monday. And I think, Rob Thompson's going to have to be a little bit creative and maybe throwing him an extra day off when he can. There might be a little bit of shuffling in the rotation when it's possible to do that. But he's going to need to pitch on normal rest a handful of times down the stretch here. And I don't know, hopefully he can groove. Hopefully this bullpen will allow them to pull him after 5 or 6 innings just so he can have energy for his next start. It's definitely going to be a factor, something to watch. And, we'll see Rob Thompson. This is a new challenge for him, and it'll be interesting to see how he attacks that particular issue.
Do you think it's even a question for Noah Syndergaard as to whether or not he's ready for a somewhat increased workload to be a guy that could pitch every 5th day, or do you think that's just out of the question?
His numbers seem to be respectable, and I think – I mean, I'm not a manager in Major League Baseball or a pitcher, and there's reasons both of those things are factual. But I have to imagine that there's some middle ground between having him pitch on the appropriate day every 5 days, and also limiting, how many reps he gets. So, okay. I mean, I think you could see Syndergaard leading 4-1 after 4 innings, and he threw 65 pitches, and maybe they pull him and go to the bullpen. That kind of thing would be routine, at least kind of to start it out. It's a problem to have. He's a better pitcher than, Kyle Gibson. He's a better pitcher than Bailey Falter. He's a better pitcher than a lot of the guys they've been trotting out there. So it's nice to have him. And he seems a little bit motivated if you've seen him on social media at all.
Oh, boy, have I. Yeah.
So hopefully that also will have him a little bit, to go.
Yeah. Yeah, he's watching it. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's challenging people and their ex-wives. He's having himself a good time. Now let's turn our attention to the bats here for a second, because Nick Castellanos, while Alec Boehm was knocking the cover off the ball in July, and JT Realmuto was having his best month of the season, and Kyle Schwarber hit another 10 home runs in that month, far under the radar was this Nick Castellanos character. The guy that the Phillies said they're willing to spend over the luxury tax for. And he all of a sudden hit 282, which isn't phenomenal by any means. But for a guy that was batting, not very well throughout the rest of the majority of the season, it's something. And over 300 over the last 2 weeks, 2+ weeks, he's about 306. Just hit his first home run that you mentioned in over a month, which is great. how optimistic should I be about this maybe finally being the right time where Nick Castellanos gets hot?
I think, and you can attest to this, doing this in the city, there's a learning curve to being a pro athlete here. Some guys get it right away. Bryce Harper is one of those guys. Looks like Noah Syndergaard could be one of those guys. Nick Castellanos maybe didn't know what he was getting into, as we saw with I don't know what you want to call it, the argument with the fans booing gate, whatever you want to call it.
Kerfluffle, a kerfluffle.
It's a kerfuffle. There's the Ben Simmons and Marc as opposed to the Joel Embiids. So Castellanos, I'm hoping that home run will get him going. That month will get him going. There's like instincts are battling when it comes to this, and hopefully, his body of work, shows that he should be able to revert closer to the mean and start hitting more dingers. I think that one of the X factors is playing in Philadelphia is a pressure, and it's not for everybody, and it's tough giving out money like that to a player without knowing if he's a good fit for Philly. And it's a small sample size. It's a little bit half a season. He's got a lot more time under contract, so we'll see how that goes. But hopefully he figures out the curve. That would be nice to see.
I do want to ask you one more thing about the deadline, and this goes to a guy that's going to be getting at bats, and his bat certainly needs to come around. Dave Dombrowski said that Brandon Marsh, who they got in the Ohapi trade from the LA Angels, excuse me, bringing him in here, defensive guy, great, fixable swing, and that's fantastic. Two things on him. What do you think the ceiling would be for a guy like him? Do you think he could have a fixable swing here in Philadelphia? And then the other thing is Logan Ohapi. I found it interesting that it was reported that they weren't going to part ways with any of their top 5 prospects, and they ended up parting ways with at least Logan Ohapi, and depending on where you would rate Ben Brown, he was up there too. But it seems like you maybe could have packaged Ohapi to try to get a bigger name, a bigger talent, maybe somebody like a Michael Taylor who you would have had control of for at least another season after this one. It seems like they overpaid for a guy that still has a lot of work to do on his own game now.
I think that the market for a catcher like Ohapi, I don't know how we're pronouncing it. I haven't said his name out a lot. But yeah, he was their third ranked prospect, and he's absolutely completely blocked by JT Realmuto.
Sure.
There's also there's a lot of catching depth in the Phillies farm system. Rafael Marchand is a name. He hasn't really turned out lately, but he's a guy who was on the cusp of being in the big leagues. And then Garrett Stubbs is having a pretty good season as a backup. The chances of him breaking through in the next 3 seasons before he's 25 years old are very slim in this organization.
Sure.
So him being the third ranked prospect, I think, is definitely selling high. And I think that that's probably a smart move because you never know what's going to happen a year from now. And catchers are, getting beat down, sitting on their knees for 9 innings every day, calling games and getting hit with foul balls and stuff, catching stuff. So if they don't really have any kind of plan for this guy, I don't really have a problem with them essentially swapping him for an outfield prospect who we have more information on, the field information on this guy than the Angels have on Ohapi because he's only played in the minors. So based on that alone, the Phillies obviously were able to say what you want about the Phillies' ability to evaluate talent. I mean, that's a topic itself, but they did think that this guy prospect fit into what they needed more. So from that standpoint, I have no problem with it. It's just the way that baseball trades work. I would really trade the prospects like 9 out of 10 times, maybe 10.
Oh, I'm with you there. I'm with you there. And I said on yesterday's show, yeah, as far as the JC Realmuto blocking him, I get it. But I felt like if you were going to say at one point that this guy was difficult to move, then I would have expected a guy that didn't need as much polishing as a guy like Brandon Marsh still has.
I should say there were some really freaking talented prospects that changed teams over the past couple of days. Mm-hmm. And I'm almost wondering if the position player market, just because of the prices that were being paid for some guys, may have been really high. The fact that it was just a 1-for-1 with a guy who was blocked, I'm okay with it. I think at worst it was an even split, and I think at best could win the trade down the line because this is area of need. And This Phillies team isn't a team that is able to just take the best available. They have to go based on need. So we'll see how he does. Like I said, I think if he hits 240 and plays a good outfield, and I mean, you see that beard. I don't think I'll ever reach beard like that. I mean,
keep working.
He seems like him and Syndergaard coming. Maybe it'll make Bryce Harper start to grow his hair out. Could be fun to see. I'm very interested in that kind of thing. But yeah, I think his ceiling is probably, I don't know, Odubel Herrera when he was good before all the stuff hit the fan.
Right.
Hopefully better than Roman Quinn or any, Adam Hasley. They've had some really bad luck in center field. So,
oh my god, yeah, they certainly have, and I'm certainly rooting for the guy. It was the only thing they did at the deadline that made me go, that seems odd to me. Not that I think Brandon Marsh is some waste or anything like that, but it's just like that seems a little odd. For all the reasons.
Sorry to interrupt, Mark, but think about the prospects they didn't trade as well for to get Marsh. They did trade a pitcher. They didn't trade an outfielder. They didn't trade a shortstop. They traded a catcher.
Right.
Which I think that matters. That definitely factors in. This guy had nowhere to go.
Right. Gotcha. Now, with all this being said and done, and the Cardinals improved a little bit of there as well with Quintana, for instance, like that. Is this Phillies team a lot closer now? Once you get Gene Segura back, once you get Bryce Harper back, is this team bound for the wild card? Are they set up at this point with getting guys back healthy? Are they set up to be, at least on paper, the best team to have that shot at the third wild card?
So they're playing the Nationals 11 times, and the Nationals' best hitter is Cal Franco now, I think. So between that, and I think they have a couple series against Marlins who they figured out how to beat the Marlins, and the Marlins are also sellers at the deadline. They're worse. I think from that standpoint, and I think they have a couple series against the Reds as well. So their schedule is pretty easy. So they're not going to be playing the Cardinals and the Padres head-to-head, thankfully. I think if they did, this would be a different conversation. But based on the games ahead of them, I think they can come out with a better record over the next months than either the Padres or potentially.
All right. I'm all for it. Evan Macy, always great catching up with you. Really appreciate it. Best luck to you the next time you're out there Twilight golfing as well. And here's the rooting hard for Brandon Marsh, of course.
Yeah.
Evan Macy joining us from, of course, PhillyVoice.com. Evan, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark.
I really, and thanks to Evan Macy. And PJ and I are talking during the interview, and he's like, wow, you really don't like this Brandon Marsh guy or this Brandon Marsh trade. And I'm like, I hope Brandon Marsh goes out there and crushes baseballs. I hope grows to be a 270 hitter with 20 home runs a season. Like, I hope, please, by all means, we already know you can play defense great. But the thing, I'm not necessarily against the trade. I'm against how you use Logan O'Hoppe in the trade. Like, to me, he's one of your prize chips. I'm not going to call him a blue chipper by any means. And yes, he's blocked by JT Realmuto. But no one was saying you had to trade him right now. If you're over the luxury tax and you're trying to win now, I think a much better trade would have been packaging him and maybe another prospect or two. Not saying Painter, not saying, even Ben Brown, who they gave away for yesterday's save master general, David Robertson. But maybe package somebody else and you trade him to Kansas City and you bring in Michael Taylor, who's ready now, is definitely an upgrade. Look, one thing you look at with Brandon Marsh, he is an upgrade at the center field position. Defensively alone, as everyone's talking about, and it's true, if you see him playing with the Angels at all, watch highlights after the fact, definitely better than what you have defensively, far and away. The Phillies are very confident they can correct the swing, great. But, like, you can get a 270 hitter and a decent center fielder for not just the rest of this year, but also next year. So it would even be a rental. And yes, I understand the 4 years of control you would have with Brandon Marsh. I understand all the positives of the trade. The only thing that I question is if they spent the right prospect on making that trade. And the wild thing is, that kind of confirms how I feel, is that you gave the Angels automatically their best prospect. Their best prospect now is Logan O'Hoppe, the guy you just gave them. So if you could have gotten a guy with just Logan O'Hoppe alone, if you could have gotten a guy like Brandon Marsh. What's to say another prospect or two would have sweetened the pot to maybe bring in a guy like Michael Taylor, sending him to the Kansas City Royals? I know that here he's blocked, but what he is here shouldn't matter anywhere else. It matters that he's blocked here in Philadelphia. It doesn't matter that he's blocked in Los Angeles. It doesn't matter that he's blocked if he was going to the Royals, for instance. I just think that there was a better way to spend that chip. That's my issue with the trade. Brandon Marsh, go out there and turn yourself into a damn Hall of Famer, please. Phillies now have hit the reset button, I will say this, on their center field. I don't want to call him a prospect anymore because he's played parts of 2 seasons in the big leagues, but they have now flipped the center field of the future moniker from either Mickey Moniak, who not a lot of people had confidence in to begin with, and although I was rooting for him, I didn't see him do it here, who was, by the way, in the starting lineup last night for the Angels, and Matt Vierling or Odubel Herrera. So addition by subtraction alone, I get it. They upgraded their starting 9. That's what the trade deadline's all about. And that's why I give the pass-fail grade that is the deadline. I give David Dombrowski a passing grade. He passes. Made the team better. That's what he's supposed to do. Now the team will get even better with health, hopefully, with Segura and Harper as this month goes on. But just as far as the trade itself goes, I don't hate it. I'm puzzled by the idea that you were trading him for a guy that still needs a lot of work. That's it. That's all I'm saying. People losing their minds. Social media people hitting me up. Good Lord. Good Lord. People. Anyway, thanks again to Evan Macy. Always enjoy talking to him. A little Twilight Golf. Good for him. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about the great people of Blue Chew and BlueChew.com. But now you've heard of Blue Chew, fellas. Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form at a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew tablets help men combat all forms of ED. And again, Blue Chew is an online prescription service, so there's no embarrassing trips to the doctor or pharmacy, as Blue Chew ships right to your door in a discreet package. Here's the Blue Chew process. Sign up at BlueChew.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive a prescription within days, and it's all done online. Also, Blue Chew's, once you talk to their licensed medical provider, they'll work with you to help you find the right ingredient and strength of your prescription. Don't like swallowing pills? No problem here. Blue Chew's tablets are chewable, so it's not just a clever name. Blue Chew's tablets are also made right here in the good old US of A. And they prepare and ship direct to your house, so it's cheaper than a pharmacy. And here's a special offer for our listeners and viewers. Blue Chew, you can try it for free when you use promo code Farzy at checkout. That's promo code Farzy at checkout. You get your first month free. Just pay $5 shipping. BlueChew.com, promo code Farzy. Get your first month free. Fellas, help yourselves, help your lady, help your lover. BlueChew.com, promo code Farzy. Just pay $5 shipping. How about Freestone Farm CBD? FreestoneFarmCBD.com. You'll find an incredible strain menu with Freestone Farm CBD. If you like CBD, if you're using CBD, if you want to try something else, try something a little bit better, upgrade a little bit, Freestone Farm CBD, FreestoneFarmCBD.com. Promo code Farzy gets you 20% off. Promo code Farzy gets you 20% off at Freestone Farm CBD at FreestoneFarmCBD.com. I'm sure you've tried different brands of CBD, but this is the best. What's even more exciting for our friends at Freestone Farms, they just unveiled their all-new strain menu with supremely good CBD at prices you'll love. Their menu is something you'll have to check out, with strains like their insane tropical tasting Bayox that clocks in at a chart topping 24.1%, and Super CBD, which is half Hindu, Kush, and 21%. The genetics of these guys are incredible. They also grow all their premium hemp flower in the Garden State with all organic inputs and IPM. There's absolutely nothing synthetic from farm to jar. And after harvest, they carefully preserve all their plant compounds with a perfect 3-month cure. Just one look or smell is enough to let you know it's CBD done right. And that's the perfect product for anyone looking to take a more natural approach to everything they put in their bodies. And now, how'd you like this? 20% off. FreestoneFarmCBD.com when you use promo code Farzy at FreestoneFarmCBD.com. How about the Versus Game, people? Download the Versus Game app to your phone and let the games begin. Follow the @Farzy Show. The question we have right now going, you can answer yes or no. Here's the question. Win yourself some cashola. Here you go. Nick Castellanos, having a hell of a week, batting over 400. Hit his first home run. 282 in the month of July, as I mentioned. is Nick Castellanos finally getting hot? In the next 4 games, all against the Nationals, will Nick Castellanos hit 2 or more home runs? That's the question. Yes or no? Very simple. At Farzy Show on the Versus Game. Download the Versus Game app to your phone. Let the games begin. How about this, ladies and gentlemen? Answer this question. When you talk about the great people at PHL Sports Nation, Philadelphia Sports Nation, are you following Philadelphia Sports Nation? PHLSportsNation.com. That's right, April. The mic is back. Let's talk to everybody in the chat with our chat check. See how you guys are feeling today. Sean Gillespie, good morning. Tyvita, John, Johnny. What's going on? Popeye the Sailor Man. Well, blow me down. That was terrible. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself, but Popeye was one of my favorite cartoons ever. Bluto is still a jerk. April, hello. John Cheesebro. April, I've been all right. I had days where I could sleep in a little bit. Well, good for you. Needed Tyvita. All I needed was some constructive criticism. Is that Ben Simmons we're talking about here, right? April, hello, John. Sean Gillespie, what's going on, Sean? John, hello again. As long as we never have any more bullpen games, yeah, that's fine. I told you guys yesterday, when I think of a bullpen game, I think of Chad Qualls ruining Chase Utley Day on Chase Utley's return at Citizens Bank Park, and I think that was from injury, not like from the Dodgers. And I think of a 13-1 loss. That's just like what my mind goes to, some ridiculous score where you just get the poop beat out of you. Doc says it wasn't what he said. His best bet was to say something like, "We haven't won with him, so we don't know if we could be a championship point. If it could be a championship point guard." You're not off, John. You're not off. Duck Rivers needs some more adjustments. I concur. Like, I don't want to rehash too much of the Ben Simmons stuff because it's water under the bridge. But when Doc came out and added a little bit more information, like that little nugget about how Ben said, "Well, this is why I can't stay here," and Doc's like, "That's not a reason to leave." What? That's like going to the hospital because you mildly stubbed your toe. Like, no, you're not. What are you talking about? You're leaving. And it's just funny that Doc is the one who threw him out of practice. And I'm not necessarily against that either. But that conversation did happen well after the fact. Ben apparently was already gone, according to Doc. I don't care. Tyvita, I don't care how much good Duck Rivers did. He has to go. There you go. I'm not saying you're wrong. Sean Gillespie, this is Duck Rivers last. I like how he's still Duck. We haven't talked about him in months, and he's still Duck Rivers. Duck Rivers last year, no improvement again. I hope he has the humility to look at his own past mistakes. The idea that he's covering up for the whole, can you win a championship with Ben Simmons as your point guard? I don't know. Ugh. Like, that's what you said, man. You didn't say, I don't even want to think about that right now. Like, that's what he thinks he said, or at least what he was thinking in his head and hopes he said out loud, but he didn't. Jalen Reagor is as useful as a swimsuit pool filled with dry ice. What? This is great. John, that was a good one. Here's the problem. Robert Kraft, Jerry Jones, whatever the mess Daniel Snyder had going on, since they don't punish their owners like that, how can they punish their players like Watson, for instance? That's a valid point. The fact that Dan Snyder is even associated with the NFL anymore is amazing to me. I mean, I listed the examples here with now ignoring the judge and then ignoring your investigator during the Ezekiel Elliott case. And now the whole fiasco with Washington. NFL be better? I guess still a step in the right direction is no matter the gender of the judge, no matter the gender, they're doing the right thing. Because I don't think Deshaun Watson is exactly the best dude on the planet. So I do look, when the ruling came down, I said what I hate saying is we got to wait and see because this isn't over. I'm going to bet my money that the NFL is still going to ask for more. They went into the negotiation. And according to Yahoo Sports, the other thing that came out in the story that I referenced earlier, according to Yahoo Sports, the NFL came out and said, the NFL knew that they weren't going to get the 1-year suspension months before it actually came out. They said they would have known during the hearing, at least had an idea that they weren't going to get the 1-game suspension. So scramble mode to take even 24 hours was a little bit of time. April, the judge looked at the NFL's history of handling stuff like this and thought, oh, this is probably what they want. Probably, April. Mullet, what's going on, brother? Sean, hello again. John, hello again. Tyvita, this guy's on dog food? This guy is on dog food. Tyvita, I'm stealing that. Instead of like, is this guy on meth? Like, is this guy on dog food? Does it make you hallucinate? Because I know some dog food's poisonous for humans. Somebody told me that it has to have some kind of thing that says like human approved. And it's like, that shouldn't be. Even if it is, no. Corey Knable and Foot are horrible. Not Brad Hand, Foot. I like that. Sean Gillespie, stick to your Pacino and walking impressions. Come on, Sean. Why would you take on my impressions? Why? All right, that's terrible. I need a little bit more rasp in my voice. Say Miss Guzzi. Thanks, everybody in the chat. You guys are great. Let's get into our morning rush. Brought to you by Sky Motorcars, SkyMotorcars.com. By the way, I've been teasing this for a while. We got some special things going on with Sky Motorcars. Can't wait till we're able to let those episodes drop. But looking pretty good for some guests that we got going on with a little program we're doing with Sky Motorcars. So look forward to that. Phillies, Noah Syndergaard, debut tonight, 7:05, South Philadelphia. Paolo Espino gets the start for the Washington Nationals tonight. The depleted Washington Nationals as they begin this 4-game series. Go handle your business tonight, Philadelphia Phillies. Yes, please, and thank you. The Phillies, the last time they faced Espino, that was just early July it was, back on July the 5th, and the Phillies were able to run him out of the ballgame at 3 2/3, which is about par for the course for his starts. But he allowed 4 runs, all of them earned on 6 hits, including 2 home runs. That was his second loss on the year. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. My name is Marc Farzetta. This is the Farzy Show, presented by Steven Singer Jewelers. Jim Hyden produced the program, did a wonderful job. Good God, 20 minutes. Bonus time, baby. Went into overtime today, babe. Jim Hyden produced the program, did a wonderful job. This is a Buzz Sports Entertainment production. My name is Marc Farzetta. Have a great rest of your day. Talk to you guys tomorrow, hopefully after a Phillies victory. Take it easy, everybody.